Welcome to this evening's webinar. My name is Bianca. I'm a team member here at Quad, where we are dedicated to helping you guys get into your dream college. Tonight's webinar will be focusing on touring colleges. We are gonna just jump right into our agenda. So we're gonna start off with introductions. We are joined today by two amazing panelists, Jennifer and Dominique. They're gonna make their intros and talk a bit about themselves. Then we're going to go ahead and talk about why it is so important to tour colleges if you can. We're going to talk about reasons why you should visit a college. We're going to then talk about how you can plan your college visits and make the most of your college tour. And then we are going to talk about some tips and things to keep in mind as you go on your tours. And then we're going to finish it off with a Q&A for any questions that you might have. We have a Q&A box somewhere on your screen, so you can type in your questions towards the end of our session. So we'll get started with introductions.
Hello, everyone. My name is Jennifer White. It's great to be with you this evening. I'm originally from Baltimore, Maryland, where I'm currently based, and graduated from Harvard with a degree in English and East Asian Studies. I spent time working for a few years at the university after graduation, and then did my graduate work abroad in Tokyo, Japan, on a grant from the Ministry of Japanese Education. And after that, I directed study abroad programs across the US at a variety of private institutions, including Washington University in St. Louis, and have been in the selective college admissions consulting space for a while now. Prior to doing so independently with Quad, I was campus-based here at a selective secondary school where I was director of college guidance and also coordinated the IB curriculum. And look forward to talking with you this evening.
All right, awesome. And hello, everyone. My name is Dominique Dadekian. My background in admissions comes from my experience at Dartmouth College, which was the university that I attended for undergrad. I was a tour guide while I was at Dartmouth College, so I can give some insight into exactly what tours look like and kind of what you can expect and the additional things that you can ask for that you may not see, right on the tour. The other kind of opportunities you can take advantage of with the admissions office. After I graduated from Dartmouth, I entered into working in the public education space. I was part of Teach for America, and I'm now working at a middle school. So I have worked with high school students and middle school students to kind of get themselves to a point where they are ready to apply to college and building their candidacy. And I also served as an alumni interviewer for Dartmouth as well. And I am also very, very excited to jump in tonight.
All right, that said, let's get this show on the road. So we're going to start off with why it might be so important for you to tour colleges. Let's go.
So we like to say that, there's nothing that beats personal experience of a school location to assess whether it's going to be a good fit for you. I think back to the years that I spent running study abroad programs, and the whole point was to get students to go abroad to another country so that they could soak up the culture. And the same idea holds true for campus visits. You're not going to get to know what Italy is like from watching some movies and looking at websites. You actually need to go and soak it up. So this gives you, when you're on your campus tours, you get an opportunity to learn firsthand about the fit between you and a school. And that's part of what the whole process of deciding on your college list and goals is about. And you might not be able to make it to all of the colleges on your list, but working with your college counselor, we can help you prioritize which ones are the most important to visit and why, and help you craft a strategy to make the most out of those visits.
Thank you so much, Jennifer. Do you have anything to add to that, Dominique?
I think we can just jump right in. I think the next slide really kind of dives into the specific things that you can look for on a tour.
Beautiful. So we're going to go into some more specific reasons why you should visit colleges. Dominique?
All right, awesome. So there's kind of 4 main reasons that you should visit a college, and they're all listed here. So number 1, you will just get to experience what life at that college is like. We highly recommend that you are able to visit kind of in the middle of the week on a weekday when classes are in full swing, so you can get an idea of what exactly it might look like for you to be at that college again on any given kind of random everyday day. And so, you know, going on the weekends is great. Going on summer break is great if that's what you're able to do. And I understand that for most people, like, you have school during the week, and so it's hard. But if you are able to carve out that time, you can get the most authentic experience by going midweek during an academic term. Another thing you'll be able to do is just ask questions. You can ask questions of a lot of different people that can give you different insights into different pieces of campus culture. And so, yes, you'll have a tour guide when you show up to go on a campus tour, but you'll also be able to potentially get put in touch with different professors for majors or programs you're interested in. You can talk to students who are involved in clubs you might be interested in. Believe it or not, most college students are super, super welcoming. And so if you were to ask your tour guide or someone that you met on campus, hey, do you know anyone who's involved in the symphony orchestra? Do you know anybody who's involved in theater? Right? They can probably get you a friend, or even just like an email or a phone number of someone who's willing to talk to you about their experience. A lot of college students really, really love the school that they go to, and they want to sell that and just help kind of mentor younger students. And so don't be afraid to kind of ask to be put in touch with the people you want to be put in touch with, whether it be faculty or students who are involved in specific things that you're interested in. Visiting colleges, of course, also can help you just gather information. Gathering information are just about just what to look for, right? You may not know what you're looking for, or you may not know what you don't know until you start visiting colleges. For example, I remember, you know, in high school, I didn't really know what I was looking for. I didn't really know the difference between an urban campus and a rural campus until I visited Dartmouth versus Boston University, which is right in the heart of Boston and part of the city. And so it's kind of those things that I didn't really know to look for that actually make a huge, huge difference. A lot of times high school students are relatively sheltered in the experiences that they've had, and they're growing up potentially in the same town, attending the same schools. And so just kind of being able to see what's available to you firsthand can be really, really helpful. And then, of course, going along with that, you'll be able to solidify your college list, because, again, you'll be able to see exactly what you do and don't want about specific schools and specific types of settings and campus cultures, et cetera.
And I would just add to that, there's something I would encourage you to do and something I would encourage you not to do that I've seen my students do. Some students would visit a school and I'd ask them what they thought and how it went. And I just really didn't like it. Okay, well, why didn't you really like it? Well, the weather was bad that day. It was cold and rainy, or it was hot. And I'm like, really? You're going to let the weather determine your whole perception of the school? Because you're going to have great weather days. Obviously, you're going to have not great weather days. So don't let the weather influence you too much, right, in this important decision. The other thing I would encourage you to do is any school that is a candidate for an early decision or restrictive early action application, those early November 1st deadlines, that's the school that you really want to make a priority to get to before you apply. And to get to, like Dominique was saying, when students are there, that's the school that you're promising to go to if you get into it. And you really need to see it in action. You need to get a sense of the students, the faculty, what the dining halls are like, all of it, and spend as much time there as you can. Other schools that you're applying to in a regular decision round, if you don't get into your school, ED or REA, those you can wait until you get in the spring. You see where you're admitted. If you can't go everywhere before you apply, that's okay. But that early round, I think, is really crucial to visit in advance.
Amazing. All right, so now that we know why you should be visiting colleges, if you can, we're going to talk about how you can plan your college visit.
Yeah, and so as we've been saying, you know, when should you visit? It makes a lot of sense to visit if you can, as you're finalizing your college list during that summer right before your senior year starts, or early on in the fall semester. to the extent that it's possible to do that. But I think, and again, like Dominique was saying, that the value of seeing buildings, you can see that on the website, you can take a virtual tour, and maybe you get a sense a little bit more from being there or about the city. But to the extent that you can get there when students are there, that's really the more important aspect. And I have sophomores and juniors among my students who are doing campus tours as well. It's not too early, and you can get a sense of big, small, rural, urban, suburban. You can get a general sense of what kind of campus is going to be a good fit for you. And that can be really helpful to your college counselor in narrowing down your list.
Thanks so much, Jen. Do you have anything to add to that, Dominique?
I think we really covered everything. I would just give like a short anecdote. I went to Dartmouth College. I absolutely fell in love with Dartmouth, and it was homecoming weekend when this happened. So I was there on Saturday of homecoming, and the campus was just a buzz with people. Everybody's families was there. Everybody was wearing their spirit gear. There was a football game. I was like, wow, this place is awesome. And that was true. And I did end up loving Dartmouth, but that definitely skewed my opinion of the school. And I didn't realize it was homecoming weekend actually until after. And I found out like online essentially that it was homecoming weekend, because I had a very short amount of time to be there. So I went on the tour and just left, and nobody had mentioned it to me. And I knew something was going on. So all of that to say, do your research ahead of time. Just see what events are going on. See if it is maybe a big weekend, or if anything particular is going on campus, because again, just like the weather can kind of cloud your judgment or make it seem like it's something that it's not. Events happening on campus, there's total ebbs and flows on every college campus. If you show up on a certain day, there could be like literally not a single person there. And that's also a terrible representation. It could just be that everybody's on break. So yeah, definitely keep that in mind.
Thanks so much. All right, so we're going to talk about which schools you should visit, what considerations you can make before you make those choices.
For sure. Yeah. So, a lot of students, we recommend that students apply to give or take 10-ish schools. So some like as many as 15, some as few as 5. Right. And so like right around that 10 is kind of the sweet spot. It may be really hard, especially if you're looking at schools all over the country, to show up to 10, even 15 schools if you're going to apply to that many. And so what I would really say to prioritize here is diversity of the schools. And so, for example, if you're interested in, let's say 2 of the schools on your list are Dartmouth, I just keep picking on it because it's my experience, Dartmouth, which is in rural New Hampshire, and then maybe NYU, which is in the heart of New York City, right? Those are great places to visit, because then you can get a sense of, well, what is a rural campus like in general? And what is a campus like in a big city in general? And so then, say maybe you don't have a chance to also visit Columbia when you're in New York, at least you know what New York is like. At least you made the time, you were able to see New York, and then you can kind of extrapolate from there. Same thing with maybe other rural schools. You didn't get a chance to visit Cornell, which is also in a rural area, right? You can kind of extrapolate that it may be like Dartmouth, at least in the way that in the place that it's set. And so just being able to kind of hit as many kind of different types of schools, also like elite schools and schools that you may consider more of a safety option, is another thing as well. There may be a school that, maybe you weren't targeting and super excited about, but you just wanted it on your list because you were pretty sure you were going to get in. Maybe you love it, right? And maybe that's where you end up going, and you're surprised of kind of what you think of it. So as many different types of schools, as many different types of environments, STEM versus liberal arts, all of those different things, because that again can help you get a sense of exactly what you like about each school.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And then as we move on to the next slide, something that I was thinking about as we were getting ready for the presentation today is, for those of us who drive, we all had to learn to drive, right? And I don't know about you, but the first time I got on a highway and had to go 55, 60, 65 miles an hour with my driver's ed instructor, I was like, oh my gosh, this is so fast. Now I don't think twice about it, right? But the first time I ever did it, it was so like intimidating and almost overwhelming. I couldn't really focus on the task at hand. And the same thing, I was kind of drawing an analogy in my mind to when we're visiting colleges. I went to a high school that had 55 students in my graduating class. So when I landed at Harvard for an overnight visit, I was just kind of like shell shocked walking around the campus with all of these people. And I'm, from kind of a suburban area, and Cambridge was, you walk out the campus gate and you're right in the middle of this college, like quintessential college town atmosphere. So, and that really made a huge impression on me. And I was like, I love this. I want to come here. You can get that environment in a lot of different places. I just didn't know it. So to the extent that you're able, like, you can look at colleges and universities that are right in your backyard. They might not be on your list at all, but you might be in a high school that's got, a couple hundred students like mine did. Even if your high school has a couple thousand students and you're looking at going to a big state school, just spend some time on the campus and the environment and be like, oh, okay, this is what it's like to be in this very unique living and learning space where I'm going to spend 4 years of my life, kind of getting a sense of what that feels like in general at all, before you even start going on to try to compare, like, well, how's Columbia different from Brown, or how's Stanford different from UC Berkeley, or whatever your comparison choices are going to be. I think that can be super useful. And also, if you are betwixt and between majors, you're trying to still figure it out. You don't know what anthropology is. You've never thought about doing, political science as a major. You can sit in on classes just to get a sense of what the academic fields are like at a college that might not be even remotely on your list, right? You can do campus tours, you can get to know places that are right nearby, and that knowledge can help you as you're developing your college list. So we definitely recommend that you're doing your top picks. You might want to visit your safety schools just to make sure you can kind of imagine, in worst case scenario, I'm going to need to be going here. Can I do this? That could be a strategy if it works out for you geographically. But then, like I was saying, colleges in your area, you can have a methodology, like, right? A method to your madness in terms of why you're doing that. And it is going to help you overall, because this is an independent research project that you're doing with the help of a mentor in your college counselor, and maybe a couple other trusted advisors. Your family is going to have a lot of opinions about this, some teachers at your school, but try not to be too swayed by peer pressure. And I had this conversation with my students who were going on study abroad programs all the time. Like, my best friend and I want to go to Spain together, and we're going to go to the Madrid program. And okay, that's great. How much of a clone are you and your best friend, right? Just because it's going to work for one of you doesn't mean it's the best thing for the other. So as you're listening to how excited your friends might be getting about certain schools, you also have to be reminding yourself, like, okay, to what extent am I similar to them and dissimilar from them? And what they like is going to be exactly the same as what I like? Probably not. You want to be really thinking it through for yourself.
That was beautifully said, Jennifer. Do you have anything to add to this, Dominique, or shall we move on?
I think that's everything. I think that was a really good anecdote about touring Harvard, and I think that totally rings true for sure. So just get out there and explore, I think, is the big takeaway.
All right, so now we're going to talk about how you can make the most of your college tour, things you should be doing, steps you can take to really soak in the colleges you're visiting.
Awesome. So step number one, I would say, hugely important, and I think overlooked. Don't just show up and walk around and kind of hope to learn by osmosis. Really important to go in with a plan, because this is a huge opportunity, right? You may only have a couple hours on campus, you may have a day, but you'll probably not have much more than that, right? So this is your chance to learn everything you want to know about this school. And again, it can be something as complex as sitting down with a professor and talking about the major program you're interested, or different study abroad programs you might be interested in, something like that. Or it can be something as small as, do I like the pizza at the dining hall? Because if I can't stand that, I can't go here for 4 years, right? Which is kind of, I joke, but you do need to like the food of the college that you go to for 4 years, right? So it's little things like that to make sure that this is a place that's a good fit for you. And so go into it with whether it's a list of questions for the tour guide, a list of people you want to meet. Do I want to visit the biology building because I want to be a biology major and that's where I'm going to spend all of my time? Make sure you see the parts of campus that you anticipate being a big part of your life, and make sure that you, again, just kind of answer those basic questions for yourself. Like, can I live here? Do I like the food? Do I like the weather? I'm going to say the weather enough, right? Am I going to California? Am I going to Florida? Am I going to, northern New England where it gets really, really cold in the winter? Just all those different questions. Make sure that you're kind of ready to gather that information, because you don't want to be thinking of these questions when you've already potentially flown all the way home, and you have that opportunity in front of you.
So what are some of the factors that inform what a college feels like, right? Things like class sizes and student to faculty ratios. And schools love to brag about, we have 7-to-1 faculty to student ratios. We have 10-to-1 faculty to student ratios. And sometimes the way they get to those statistics is a little bit misleading because they have a whole bunch of research faculty who aren't really teaching classes. But aggregate, if we divide the number of people who have positions of faculty or researchers by the number of students, we get this ratio. So you want to push the envelope on that a little bit and be like, okay, so if I'm an English major, how many seminars am I going to be taking? How many classes will I have that are discussion based? And when you're talking to students, your tour guides, whoever you have a chance to interact with, do you know your faculty, right? That was the thing about Harvard. Harvard was amazing. Did I know my professors? No, they were teaching graduate students. Graduate students were teaching undergraduate students. You went to office hours and they weren't there. It wasn't the point, right? There was so much else going on in terms of learning. But if you want that environment, you're wanting a small liberal arts college, you're wanting a Ivy Plus like WashU or Hopkins that really values undergraduate teaching. So don't just drink the Kool-Aid about the statistics that schools are trumpeting about themselves, but really push into it and say, okay, how many of the courses are taught by teaching assistants? How many are taught by tenured or PhD level professors, right? And just push that so that you, and assess how important that is to you, because maybe you're totally happy in a class of 300 and that's awesome. You learn that way, that's great. That's not a high priority for you, very cool. But suss that out and kind of understand what the realities are there. And then you're going to think about like, how many students live on campus versus off campus? Am I required to live on campus? Is there first year housing? How's this all set up? What kinds of supports and advising are available for me as I'm transitioning from high school to college? Because I'll tell you, it's a monstrously just huge transition in life to go from a high school environment to a college environment. And you want to know that the advising supports are going to be there for you. And then this is hugely important for so many of my students is, what is the diversity like? What is the demographic like? What kind of cultural activities and supports are going to be there for me? Am I going to find my community at this place where I'm going to be studying? And however that is that you define that for yourself, you want to really be investigating that. And again, think of this as a research project where you're the principal investigator, you're in charge, right? There's a lot of people coaching you and helping you and giving you advice and input and feedback, but it really is something that you need to take ownership of as a student.
All right, let's move on. So now that you know the things that you should be looking out for, the main things that you should be looking out for, we're going to talk about the kinds of questions you can ask once you get there.
Absolutely. Yeah. So again, the first thing is to kind of be prepared, keep your objective clear. Part of keeping that objective clear is knowing the right questions to ask, right? And so there's some examples here. What are the best reasons to go to this college? What are your favorite things? And what are some things you would change? How was your experience transitioning from high school to college? How would you spend your time outside of class? Why did you choose this college? What is campus life like? Again, maybe pepper in some questions about specific things that you've researched, specific clubs, specific majors. Can you put me in touch with blank? The answer is almost always yes. And if it's not your tour guide, it's your tour guide's friend who knows someone. it's your tour guide's professor who knows someone, it's someone in the admissions office. I think that we'll get to this later in the presentation, but there's oftentimes group kind of information sessions led by the admissions office, which is a little bit more of a formal way of getting information about the school, and having that touch point with an admissions officer or someone who can kind of directly put you in touch with other people on campus if the student that you're with on your tour is not able to do that. So the more questions you ask, the better. The cool thing, again, also about, I would say, student-led tours is that you can be a little bit more kind of informal. A student I'm working with currently with Quad, we just kind of had a conversation about the types of schools he's wanting to apply to. And, you know, he listed out all these reasons, all these things he's looking for in a school. And he's very preliminary. And he said, well, you know, I want to be a business major, and I think I want to go to a big school in a city. And then he gets a little shy at the end, and he will also, I want to like party, right? And he got so nervous. And, you know, having fun and potentially going to parties or being social and all these things in college are super important if that's something that you do or don't want to do, right? And so knowing what that social scene looks like and being very honest with someone who's almost your peer, almost similar in age, is really, really important to kind of ask about those things that, you know, someone on the admissions team isn't going to advertise to you on the website what it's like on a Friday night to go to a party or what it's like to live in the dorms, but you need to know these things. Again, it's very like tangible that you need to be able to envision yourself living there for 4 years. So don't be shy about those types of questions. Especially again with this tour guide who essentially is going to be basically a peer to you at the time of you touring.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yep. And to that, I would add, I think that we all, when we were in this situation, you know, you're a little nervous maybe about asking a question when the information session comes to a close, the presentation is over, you know, like tonight. Who's got questions? You're like, oh, I don't know if I should ask a question. I can guarantee you someone else in the room is thinking of the same question. And if you ask it, they're going to be like, yay, somebody else was wondering about this besides me. And don't be afraid to be the first person to get the conversation going. Like, you can be thinking ahead of time and work with your college counselor to have a list of questions that you're bringing with you, and just, you know, get the conversation going by asking one of them, and kind of breaking the ice. That can be a really helpful thing, especially for the people who are presenting, that there's a couple of fearless participants in the room who are like, yeah, I'll ask the first question, no big deal. And I know that one question that a lot of parents have and students have as well is about campus safety. And it's a really touchy subject, right? Nobody's going to tell you about whatever crime just happened a couple of weeks ago or last month, or if it was on campus or off campus and all this kind of stuff. They're going to give you like boilerplate diplomatic kind of, yeah, we have this, and we have our like call system and our escort thing and this and this and this, and that's great. And you still want answers. So you get to do research, and there are ways to do it. You can look at the campus newspapers. You can look at the newspapers in the area. You can, if you're really motivated and you want to dig into this, there is something called the Clery, C-L-E-R-Y Act, that requires all campuses to, in aggregate and by statistics, anonymously report certain types of crimes every year on an annual basis, and that information has to be available on their website. So you can do a Google search and you can find out some things statistically to get a better sense of what campus safety is like. Talk to the Title IX staff, ask about what staffing is like in that area. There's a lot of ways you can get this question asked indirect or answered indirectly, but just like in an information session being like, hey, so what's crime on campus like? They're not gonna, you know, nobody's gonna tell you like a real answer there. But a student on a tour, like what Dominique was saying, might give you a little bit more nuanced perspective on what that's like and what kind of measures are being taken to ensure student safety.
Those are also two great points. Yeah, so we're just going to do a little part 2 to your asking questions.
Yeah, so, and as you're going through, you just want to make sure that your questions are aligning with your goals, your personal objectives, what sort of aligns between you and the institution that you're visiting, and with your degree, what you're hoping to do in life, right? You want to have the big picture in mind and not get too caught up in the more fine points and details. Recognize that no campus is going to be perfect. I had conversations when I was working on university campuses with deans and provosts and presidents who were like, we want the perfect study abroad program, Jennifer. And I said, well, first you can give me the perfect campus here, and then I'll find you the perfect study abroad program, because it doesn't exist. We live in a world, we live in reality where some things are going to work for you really well, and some things you're just never going to love. And you have to have sort of like a rank order evaluative criteria of what's most important to me and what are the things that would be like value adds. If they're there, that's great. I don't need a vibrant sports culture, but if it's there, that'll be fun, versus like, no, that's a huge thing for me. I'm a student athlete. I need that to be an important part of the culture. Those kinds of deal breaker things, you've got to research those even in advance before your visit. You should have kind of checked those boxes off to know that, okay, the really big ticket items, things that are super important to me, I already know that this college or university offers. Therefore, I'm going to move on to like finer points and more nuanced points, and be thinking this through, because it's just true in life, and it's true in this endeavor, that you get out of it what you put into it.
Amazing. Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to talk a bit about the activities that you can plan. I know we touched on this just a little bit. So let's dive in a little bit more about the things that you can do while you're touring colleges.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I think first and foremost, like the tour of the campus should kind of just be a jumping off point. This is a great place, again, to kind of meet your very first student if you don't know anybody there yet, or if you have no connections at the school, which most students don't. I don't mean to make it sound like you should have connections there. So this may be the very first like current student that you meet at the school that can give you a little bit of insight into what things look like. That being said, oftentimes the experience of your tour guide may not be anything close to what you envision your experience being like. And so I know, again, when I was serving as a tour guide at Dartmouth, there would be kind of 3 or 4 tours oftentimes going on at once, and we would all introduce ourselves and then kind of say, okay, well, you know, I was pre-med, and I would say, well, if anyone's interested in pre-med, please feel free to come with me. And other tour guides may resonate with certain students. If that's not the case, you can also absolutely request that you be put with a tour guide who maybe shares a specific interest to you, a specific major, something like that. That can't always happen, but it doesn't hurt to ask, hey, do you have any tours going out with someone who's a business major? I'm really interested in hearing specifically from them. Like what I said, though, even if your tour guide is someone where you're like, well, this person's an athlete and they're an English major and I have nothing to do with any of that, they still may have people on campus that they can put you in touch with, even if their individual experience doesn't super speak to you. So it's just, again, the tour should be kind of the jumping off point. A group info session is great. Sometimes, and this is very school dependent, when you sign up for one of these, your name kind of shows up on a list that you've demonstrated interest. And same thing when you sign up for a tour. And some schools care a lot about this demonstrated interest. So have you shown up, and are you on the record as having signed up for a tour and an info session? That's something that can actually play into your admissions decision. Again, not at all schools, but at some schools, definitely that helps. And so just kind of all the ways that you can show that you're interested is very beneficial. Again, talking to students and professors, this can feel potentially a little awkward. I wouldn't recommend, unless you're this type of person, just walking up to a random student, because it's probably uncomfortable for you. But if it's not, trust me, students are actually really excited to talk to you. And so if you have kind of the courage and the confidence to walk up to someone in the dining hall and say, hey, what do you think of the food here? And, you know, what's your major? Blah, blah, blah. If you want to start a conversation, students are more than willing to do that. And again, see if you can get conversations with professors. So whether that's like finding them online ahead of time and emailing them and setting up an appointment, or again, just being asked to be connected with professors via your tour guide, via the admissions office, etc. That can be super helpful. You can also sit in on classes, which is something that not a lot of students do, but I think is very underrated, because you can see, again, every class is going to be different. Every professor is going to be different, but you're going to get a general sense of, okay, I'm sitting in on, you know, I'm interested in being pre-med. I'm sitting in on chemistry 101. There's 300 kids in this room. This school is not for me. Or, you know, maybe you thought that that school was for you and you thought that you would like the big lecture hall, and then you realize you just can't focus with all those people in the room, and that's all of a sudden your deal breaker. And so it's just good to get that experience. I don't think we talk, we being the general like student who goes to tour a college campus, I don't think we talk enough about like actually sitting in on the classes. As much as I said, it's, you know, it's important that you like the pizza, it's important that you also like going to class, because that is what you're going there to do. I know we talk about so many other things. We talk about extracurriculars, dorm life, all these things, but at the end of the day, like, you're going there to go to class. So hopefully you like the building you're going to be sitting in, and hopefully you're comfortable sitting in a class of 300. And if you're not, maybe you're looking at a smaller school when you're going to be in mostly seminar classes, and things like that. And so just really important to keep all that in mind. Again, visit the dorms, go into the gym. If you're someone who works out a lot, make sure you like the gym, make sure you like the food, all the different things that you can explore. Just kind of see what you can see. Dartmouth was really big on the outdoors. And so if you're an outdoors person, maybe visit like the outing club place and ask, you know, what kind of programming do you have? Can I see the canoe club? We have like a canoe place where you can rent canoes, right? Very specific things like that. I know that that's not going to be for everyone, but it's like, think about exactly what you want to do, because you're going to be spending a lot of time in these places, right? And so if you skip the places where you're going to be spending a lot of time because it's not kind of, I don't know, something basic like the dining hall or whatever, you may be missing out on getting a true glimpse into what your college experience will be like. And I think that's pretty much it. And then just, again, like, explore a little bit the surrounding community. If you're in a big city, just make sure that you're interested in, you know, the neighborhood that you're in. If you're in kind of a more contained campus that's in more of a rural area, make sure that you're comfortable with that. Make sure you know that there really is nothing else outside of the campus. Just drive around a little bit if you can. As much as you can see, the better.
Thank you so much. All right.
And I was thinking too, about, back to my driving analogy, that the curriculum is like your roadmap through your undergraduate career. And you can learn all about that on the website. But then, like Dominique was saying, getting to campus and sitting in a class is just what you need to do to road test it, right? You've got to be able to see, like, how does it feel to be in these classes? And both with the major and also with whether there's a core curriculum or not, right? Schools like Chicago and Columbia love their core curriculum. There's a whole set of courses that people should be taking to get breadth as well as depth. And then you've got Brown. It's like, that's fine. Make your own way. We don't do a core. And you need to be thinking about things like that as well, and then testing that out while you're there. And I wanted to mention briefly too that many schools, not all schools, but there are quite a few schools that will plan weekends for prospective students in the fall and for accepted admitted students in the spring. And so all the things we're talking about doing are like already arranged for you. There's huge panels. There's like faculty who are there to chat with you. There's this and that and the other, you know, like big tables full of all the student activities. Everybody's there, one-stop shopping. And it's a really easy way to get this kind of overview if you're able to align your calendar and if the school that you're interested in happens to offer these.
Thank you guys so much. All right, so we know that touring colleges is ideal, but not everyone has access to that. Not everyone can do that. So we're going to talk about a few things that you can do if you can't tour colleges.
Yep. So if you're not able to get there in person, there are so many things, especially since the pandemic, that schools have instituted to help you get a sense of what their campus is like. Because for a while, no one was on campus and schools weren't open for tours. So they had to come up with something in place of that. And those, the schools put a lot of effort, time, and resources into developing virtual tours and virtual info sessions and all kinds of opportunities to engage with the institution in a non-face-to-face format. And those have persisted. and are still available to you. So take advantage of them. Do virtual tours, do virtual information sessions. Sometimes they'll be very broad, sometimes they'll be specific. So you want to find out about the STEM opportunities here, or you want to find out about what it's like to be a humanities major here, right? Like, and if you're undecided, go to a bunch of them and try it out and see, like, let that help you inform your own journey of deciding what you want to be focusing on. You're on social media anyway, so be on their social media. Help them out with it if it's boring and bad. No, they have students do Insta takeovers. There's all kinds of different things that are fun, and will give you a sense of what it's like. So just make sure that you incorporate the time that you spend in these spaces. Be focused on your college thoughts as well. You want to be looking at their Career Center resources, internship opportunities. I love checking out the alumni feature highlights. Like, what are people doing 5 years out? What are people doing 10 years out? Who got invited back as a graduation speaker that graduated from this school? Another fun thing is that you'll see at some liberal arts colleges in particular, but other schools as well, that graduates of the school will go, they got their BA, they went on, they got their PhD, they taught for a while, and now they're back on the campus. And that, I think, says a ton, because they could choose to be teaching anywhere and they're choosing to come back to their alma mater. So that's one thing that's just kind of fun to see, like, how many faculty have the BA, and the year and their stats that graduated from this school. Be on top of the news outlets that the campus has, the blogs, subscribe to newsletters and emails, anything that is out there for you to read into and get a sense of. You want to be able to do that. There's a lot of chats. There's a lot of ambassadors that you can reach out to. Then these are students that have volunteered to be contacted, so you don't need to feel shy about reaching out to them because they've volunteered, or in some cases are being paid to do so. So make sure that if you're not able to get there in person, you're exploring as many of these avenues as you possibly can to arrive at a good assessment of the school.
Thank you so much. All right, so we're going to move on to the last part before our Q&A, and that's going to be a couple of tips for college touring.
All right, so I think this is a pretty good summary of everything we've talked about. So again, be intentional with your visit, be prepared, be ready to visit the right places, ask the right questions, and just really dive into the campus. The more that you dive into it, obviously, the more you'll get out of it. And so just really do your research ahead of time so you know exactly what you're looking for, because again, it is a very limited visit and a very limited opportunity. Even better if you could potentially set up a few appointments with a professor or a coach or someone of interest that you'd like to speak with while you're there. Number two, know what you want in a college. And this is kind of, a bit of an iterative process where the more colleges you visit, the more you figure out what you want. And so you don't necessarily have to know 100%. I didn't know. I came from a small high school as well. I didn't know for sure whether I was going to like a small school or a large school until I started visiting. And I was like, you know what? I really like this one-on-one support. I'm going to keep going with this. I think the small school is right for me. But again, it's so hard in high school. And I understand that feeling of this is the only thing I've ever known, so I don't know what I will like. I really want to encourage you all as well to kind of shy away from the thought or the feeling that so many of us want to go with, where I'm just going to apply to the best schools for my major. I'm going to apply to the top 10 because I want to go to a good school, because of the rankings. The rankings are great. They're helpful for sure. They can tell you a lot about different metrics like undergraduate teaching and, the focus on undergraduates as opposed to graduate students. They can tell you a lot about, the amount of resources a school might have based on the endowment and things like that. But also be wary of that. Make sure you're not applying to a school just because it is ranked really highly, because you may not really actually like it and enjoy it, and it may not have what you need. Just because a school is ranked really highly doesn't mean it's the best for your major, doesn't mean it has, all the different things regarding campus culture that's really going to make you successful. And there'd be nothing worse truly than to get into a school that you think is incredible, a dream school, you're so proud of it, and you actually have a miserable 4 years because it wasn't a good fit. And so of course, try to go, if you want to go to an elite school, I definitely don't want to dissuade you from that. Just make sure you're looking for the right school within those very elite schools. And then again, this kind of goes along with that. Keep an open mind. And so don't assume you're going to love a school because you grew up thinking, that you wanted to go to a certain school your whole life. Being from the Boston area, I grew up thinking I wanted to go to Harvard my whole life. And I actually didn't love the city vibe, and Dartmouth was really more my speed. And so just keep an open mind and just be ready to kind of take in that experience and see what you might like.
And do you have anything else to add to that, Jen?
I would say, just to sum up, like, you want to know what your why is. You want to know what your why is for going to the campus and have a couple of questions that you need to get answered while you're there. And when you're done with your visit, whether it's a full day, an overnight, a couple of hours, whatever you're able to spend there, or if you're doing the online interactive approach and gaining as much knowledge and understanding as you can in that way, after you've concluded that and you're going to put a wrap on it, you want to be able to say, okay, thumbs up, thumbs down, however, whatever your metric is, scale of 1 to 5, write it down and write down why, so that you're not just like, yeah, I didn't like it. Well, why didn't you like it? Or loved it. Well, why did you like it? Because after you've gone to like 7 or 8 schools and you're going back and trying to remember from 3 months ago and 6 visits back, like, well, why did I like it or not? It's going to be really helpful to have notes in your phone, notes on paper, if you're analog, like whatever your jam is, do that and have a record, but push yourself to articulate why do I even want to spend the time going here? And what am I wanting to get out of my visit? And then after it's done, why did I like it or didn't I like it? Is it going to stay a contender, or am I going to retire it from consideration? And why is that the case?
Thank you guys so much. So we are gonna go ahead and move into our Q&A section. So if you guys have any questions, now is your time to shine. Type them all into the Q&A box and we will go through them. Before we get started though, I just wanted to ask if you guys have any other final words of wisdom for our viewers tonight. Or advice or any stories you might want to tell.
I think I've shared them all.
I would say the same. I think I really did kind of go into the stories I have during it. So I apologize if I spoke a little long, but I did. That was everything.
No, it was absolutely perfect and so much valuable information. All right, so we're gonna get started with the Q&A. We have a question asking, can I sign up for a group information session or an interview with an admissions officer through a university's website? And I think to generalize that question a bit more, how would you guys suggest that someone go about booking either individual sessions or group sessions?
Absolutely. Yeah. So usually most of the time in my experience, you can just find this on like the admissions page on the website. There'll probably be a tab that says visit us or see the campus or something like that. You can usually book a tour and an admissions information session right from there. So you'll know exactly when to go, when to show up. As far as booking an interview, interviews are tough. And I actually meant to cover this and I don't think we did. Interviews, you may or may not be invited for an interview by any given school. Just because you're not invited for an interview does not mean that they don't want you. And so kind of fast forward to you're not visiting anymore. You've already applied. Just because you didn't get an interview, that could mean that they were so sure about you that you've already gotten in and you're good to go. And so not every student's going to get an interview. A lot of times students will receive an interview request to interview either with an admissions team member, or in the case of what I did, I was an alum who was interviewing on behalf of the college. You may get that invitation. Some schools will allow you to request an interview where you say, like, I would like to interview because I want to give you a little bit more context for who I am. That may be on the website. That's not as common, just to be transparent with you, that's not as common. But there is no harm in requesting it because some schools will honor that and they will especially smaller schools, they will want to sit down with you if that's something that you feel like will add to your application. So it definitely doesn't hurt to request that. And again, you can just, there's usually some sort of general admissions@blank.edu email address that you can email with any inquiries about that.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. And also, I've had some students be like, Harvard wants to interview me. I'm like, okay, I don't want to burst your bubble, but it doesn't mean that you're like getting more consideration. It means that there's an alumni who's in your area. Prior to Zoom, we had to be like in the area. Now it's, who's available anywhere, who's willing and has the capacity to interview you. It's half PR. And it's half assessing the student's fit for the university. So don't get like too excited that you're getting an interview from Stanford, MIT, Harvard. Some of the universities that are at that level are like, okay, most students that are applying to us are not going to ever set foot on the campus as a student, but we want them to have a sense of what it's like to interact with someone who has gone to the school. And that's why they do the whole alumni interviewing thing. So that's one thing that I would mention. And the other is, if you're going to reach out to a member of the admissions office staff, I mean, there are assigned AOs for your region, and that information is sometimes available publicly, sometimes not. You want to know why you're reaching out to them. You do not want to show up and be like, hey, I'm excited to be here, and make like no impression. You have to, if you're going to pursue that, you have to know why you want to have a conversation. You have to have a few specific questions that you've exhausted every other way, and you really want to connect and get a conversation going. These are typically more available at smaller, less selective schools, liberal arts colleges that are not in the top 25 rankings. And then some of the larger institutions will flat out say on their website, hi, we're so excited that you're considering our school. We don't do interviews. Period. Full stop. End of story. I mean, University of Southern California had over 80,000 applications last year. Northeastern University in Boston had over 90,000 applications. They can't, like, when schools are dealing with that kind of volume, they can't offer interviews. So they'll usually state that somewhere on their admissions policy website as well.
Thank you guys so much for answering that question. Our next question, someone is asking, if we miss a tour, event, or pre-scheduled tour, is there a possibility to request a visit separately? So I think this is more to an individual guided tour, not.
Yeah, I think again, it depends on the school. If you're dealing with a very selective school that has hundreds of thousands of applicants, right? That's one story. You probably won't be able to get that personalized, individualized tour. But again, if it's a smaller school that's maybe a little bit more niche, that's really well known for a specific subject or major, and you're really interested in that, they're definitely more willing to kind of, again, sit down with you one-on-one, maybe have that one-on-one interview, find a student that can show you around. But again, it's just going to totally depend. I actually also just want to echo again what Jennifer just mentioned. If you are going to reach out and ask them to go out of their way, make sure you have good reason to do so. So make sure you actually have exhausted all of your options. Make sure you have done all of your research, because reaching out, it's almost counterproductive for you to reach out and ask a question that you could have found on your own, because it's just showing that you're not being super resourceful. So don't reach out for the sake of reaching out, just so your name is kind of in their inbox. That won't help you so much. But if you do have a true, genuine question, where you feel like you do need to sit down with someone, whether it be an admissions officer, a student, a professor, please feel free to do that.
Thank you so much. All right, we're gonna move on to the next question. So someone is asking, is it a good idea to initially research a list of schools and kind of get your school list down, then do the actual tour? Oh, sorry, give me a sec. I'm going to reread that. I'm actually just going to read it off the thing. Is it a good idea that initially we research a list of schools and then do the actual tour when they get selected to finalize which school they want to go to?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And this is kind of what I was outlining earlier in our presentation, where for me, the exception to that is your November 1st early decision or restrictive early action school. If you are going to pursue that as an admission strategy and you are going to essentially, sign a contract, make a promise, make a pledge that if you admit me, I'm going to come, you want to visit that school before you apply to that school and make that commitment. It just makes sense. So if you're going to pursue that strategy, you want to be talking with your college counselor about that in advance. You want to be thinking strategically about how to use that one early decision or REA opportunity that you have so that you're using it wisely and you're not a 3.0 student with great extracurriculars, but not necessarily national leadership awards and this kind of thing, who says, I want to go to Yale and I'm going to use my one card that way. And you're almost kind of you're not utilizing that opportunity very wisely. I'll just say that. So you want some coaching and you want some guidance on if you're going to strategize and pursue a November 1st committed decision, an application, you want to visit that school in advance, narrow it down to 2 or 3 candidates, get to those campuses before you make that application and that commitment. For the regular decision schools, totally different ball game, and it exactly follows the way this question is phrased. Make your list, have your why identified for each of the schools, know what you're interested in doing, be able to write the why major essay, or why us, why should you pick me, why I want to pick you, what are you going to study and why. You can write all of that without ever setting foot on the campus, and then wait to see where you're admitted in the spring. Pursue some of these weekend opportunities that I've been mentioning about if they have an admitted students or accepted students day or weekend. Take advantage of that if it's at all possible, and go and check it out and then make your decision based on real information about where you've been admitted. That's a totally valid strategy. It narrows down the number of schools that you need to visit, especially if you're having to travel across the country. That can be very expensive and time consuming, and it actually makes a lot of sense. But for the November round, I really want you to think about, if at all possible, getting there before you make that application.
Thank you so much for your answer to that question. Very eloquently said. Thank you. All right, so we have one last question and then we're going to end the webinar for the evening. For our panelists, have you guys experienced any student who got into their dream school and then after touring, they suddenly realized that it wasn't their dream school, or any kind of similar situation?
I'll share an anecdote from a student of mine in this last application round who, I won't mention the schools, because it could be any school, but had thought they had a dream school and were like, yep, here's my whys, here's my reasons, I'm so excited. And I'm going to do an early decision and I'm going to go. And I said, and you're going to go visit that campus before we hit submit on this button, right? Well, no, I'm really, I'm sure it's going to be a good fit. I'm like, really, I want you to go. And they went and they came back and said, okay, I need a new ED school because that is not a school that I'm going to go to. And I'm like, okay, tell me why. And then they told me why. And we regrouped and re-strategized very quickly and got a new plan together for that early decision. So I've seen it happen that way. And, there are students every year who get accepted to Caltech and don't go. There are students every year who get accepted to Harvard and don't go. There are a lot of reasons why. It can be, changing family circumstances, changing goals, things that you came to understand through the process of applying. There's a whole host of reasons, all valid, and it's important that you make the decision that's right for you.
Thank you guys so much. So we're going to finish it off there. Thank you for joining us, and thank you to our 2 panelists for offering such great advice and their insight. If you have any more specific questions about your specific circumstance, please do book a free consultation with us. We would be so happy to help you get on the right track to figuring out your college application and reaching your goals. All right, so that's it from us tonight, and have a great one, and we hope to see you next time.